everybody. Welcome. My name is Chantelle. I am the organizing director with 350 New Hampshire, and I sit on the 350 Network Council.
Hey y'all, my name's Shemona Moreno. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the executive director at 350 Seattle and also the main rep on the 350 Network Council, and I'm really excited to be here with y'all. I just want to take a step back to give some context on who we are as the Network Council, what utility justice means generally, and give a brief overview of how we are organizing to reclaim our power. So first, the Network Council. It's a network of the 15 largest independent 350 affiliate organizations. You can see them here on the slide. We are place-based organizations building people power for climate justice. We are winning grassroots campaigns that stop the expansion of the fossil fuel industry and transition our communities to 100% renewable energy, clean energy. For the past 10 years, we have increasingly been taking this fight to the fossil fuel utilities. So that's who we are as a network council. And we're really grateful for all of you to be here tonight. For the next slide, Deneen, I just want to give a brief overview of what is utility justice. But for more information, we suggest you check out Energy Democracy Project's 2 guides, the People's Utility Justice Playbook and A People's History of Utilities. As Energy Democracy puts it, electric utilities are the heart of the climate crisis and the heart of the inequitable concentration of wealth and power that leads to a deeply unjust society. As climate justice organizers, we see utility companies as key villains in preventing the just and clean energy transition we all deserve. Everywhere we work on climate justice campaigns, from New Hampshire to Seattle, the fossil fuel utilities are there behind the scenes, opposing progress and buying public officials. Boo. Energy access is a basic human right. We need to stay warm when it's cold and to stay cool when it's hot. We need hot water for cleaning. We need to be able to cook. And some of us rely on electricity for oxygen and cannot breathe without it. So we need this, and it should be our right. Monopoly utilities are choosing to spend our money on dirty energy sources that are unreliable, expensive, and burning up the planet. They choose to raise our rates for their own profit and turn off our power in seconds if we fall behind on bills. As Energy Democracy explains, utilities have continuously increased their rates over the past decades, which has led to 1/3 of households in the United States having trouble paying their energy bills, an intersecting crisis of disinvested housing and high rates. The impact of sustained rate increase is even starker in BIPOC communities, Black, Indigenous people, and people of color, where an even higher percentage are living in energy poverty and are forced to pay staggeringly high monthly bills to their private utilities. Our utilities are bought out by big oil billionaires who are desperate to pad their own wallets by keeping us reliant on energy resources that are killing us, even when we have alternatives that are perfectly safe and affordable. Yeah, that doesn't add up at all, but it doesn't have to be this way. Okay, now we can go to the next slide. Tonight, the speakers you see here on this beautiful slide, they're going to share with us and will demonstrate what we are doing about it. We will hear from 4 different groups in our network who have been organizing to reclaim their power against their utility companies. As organizers, we know that it's an uphill battle. That is why we have selected 4 different campaigns to give a real and honest look at what it takes. In the first example from 350 Colorado, we will hear from a robust campaign that didn't quite win, though despite this, there are critical lessons to be learned as we keep the target in mind. The second example, we will hear from 350 San Diego to learn about what is in the works locally in their fight against their utility company, Sempra Energy, and the path to public power. The third example, we will hear from 350 Wisconsin about a win to protect rate cases when the odds were in their favor. And finally, we will hear from 350 New Hampshire to hear about a campaign that won against all odds. We hope that by hearing the spectrum, you are left with a sense of realistic optimism and excitement to get going with us. So stay tuned. After the speakers, you'll hear more about ways you can get involved this summer to reclaim your power in your own state and municipality. So let's get to it. I would love to spotlight our wonderful Heidi Leathwood from 350 Colorado, and take it away, Colorado.
Thanks, Shemona, and thanks everyone for being here tonight. I'm so happy to be here myself to share a little bit about our efforts in Colorado. This slide shows a map of the territory of all of the 50 electric utilities. The two investor-owned electric utilities are Xcel Energy and Black Hills Energy. Investor-owned gas utilities include both Xcel and Black Hills, along with two more. Our governor, Jared Polis, likes to tout himself as strong on climate, but his actions are mixed. He has chosen to focus on electric power and transportation for his climate work, but he supports business as usual and even expansion for oil and gas extraction and other industry. Putting aside our disappointment in how much he favors the oil and gas industry, fortunately, he wants to make a clean electric energy grid his legacy. The legislature has passed bills to set emissions reductions targets in general, including targets for specific sectors. For the electric power sector, the law requires 80% reductions by 2030 from 2005 levels. Beyond this, Polis's publicly stated goal is 100% reduction by 2040. Another positive development is that last session, a bill was passed to limit what costs utilities can pass on to ratepayers. Lobbying and advertising, among other costs, can no longer be included in our utility bills. Tonight, I'm going to talk about a recent long-term campaign, the campaign to influence Xcel's Electric Resource Plan, or ERP. This plan is approved by law and must be approved by the Public Utilities Commission, the PUC. The plan has to show how they plan to achieve the 80% reduction of emissions by 2030. And the work on this plan occurred in two phases. Before I go further, I'd like to highlight that we had a big coalition of groups working on this together, which was really crucial. Phase one included plans for the largest and dirtiest coal plant in Colorado, a plant that was originally slated by Xcel to be the last gas plant to close, not until 2070. There was already significant public opposition to this plant. And in their electric resource plan, they proposed to push the retirement sooner to 2040. But after renewed activist pressure, they revised that date to 2035. And in the end, they settled on closure before January 1st, 2031. After that victory, we turned our attention to phase two. In this phase, Xcel proposed to build a lot more renewables, which was good. But the problem is they also proposed to build 3 new gas-fired plants. Our coalition mobilized against this. Ratepayers should not have to pay for the building and then the future decommissioning of these plants, which run on the energy of the past. So as I mentioned, we had a large coalition of groups. We coordinated between those who were formal parties and those who weren't and who could do more in terms of public mobilization. 350 Colorado was working on public mobilization. The whole process was longer than 2 years, and this continued engagement shows how fired up groups and members of the public are to work on utilities. People turned out for rallies in both phases. They marched around the coal plant. We rallied at Xcel on the steps of the Capitol and sent letters both to the Xcel board and to the PUC. People also spoke at city council meetings of the cities that were a part of the settlement process for phase one. People did LTEs in both phases and shared on social media. In phase two alone, more than 600 public comments were submitted. One of the challenges was, and I'm not sure whether this was a technological glitch or human error by the PUC staff, but almost 400 comments submitted through a one-click letter that we created did not make it into the docket. And when I discovered it, I had to go in the back end and make a file of all of the 400 comments and upload them all together in one file. So that was not ideal. The biggest challenge, though, was that the law required utilities to both achieve the emissions reductions and stay under a rate cap. So as the PUC considered the plans, they had to look at cost. Xcel did submit an alternative plan that would have relied completely on renewables, but it was more expensive according to Excel's modeling than the plan Excel wanted. And of course, we need to look at cost, but the problem is Excel, we think that Excel arranged their plans and the estimated cost the way they wanted it to make their plan look better. Let's go to the next slide. Here's just a few highlights and pictures of some of our rallies. And let's look at the next slide. In the end, it was that cost issue that caused the PUC to decide on an alternative plan that was less expensive than Excel's preferred plan. The plan that they ended up choosing had fewer renewables and more gas. But we still didn't give up. They first announced their decision only verbally, so the public got very engaged, and we solicited comments pleading with the PUC to reconsider before they issued their decision in writing. After all, the long-term cost of the plan they chose was actually higher per unit of energy. Some reflections on the fact that we didn't win. Though disappointing, we really have to choose to see this as a bump in the road. The win on the coal plant is still a victory. There's still a great coalition of groups that had mobilized and are ready to continue fighting Excel, many activated members of the public to continue work into the future. And our work may have had indirect effects related to the gas side of Excel's utility. The PUC has already indicated to Excel on their gas infrastructure plan that they have to look at options to stop expanding gas infrastructure and actually start dismantling it. Also, a bill was passed this year to identify 5 communities as pilot communities for non-gas energy sources. Next slide. Finally, what's next and where to put our energy? The mobilization for the ERP process, although we did not achieve all that we would have liked, it can stay activated to work on things together in the future. My cat is attacking me here, so sorry. A few difficulties while I get him away for my conclusion. There is a clean heat plan that's currently under consideration, and we're mobilizing against the use of hydrogen in home heating. And then the next phase in the closure of our last coal plant before 2031 is a just transition plan for Pueblo. We are mobilizing against the proposals to transform that last coal plant to nuclear and the backup proposal to transform it to a gas plant with carbon capture and storage. We will continue to build and nurture coalition, and we would like to work on more legislation and also to expand our utilities work beyond Excel. And we look forward to learning from the other groups around the country. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Heidi. And I'm sure if we could send reactions, everyone would be like cheering, like great work and like love that you guys are not stopping. And it's just, you have learned a lot of great lessons to keep on moving. And guess what? Now there's a whole nation of people who are going to be doing the same thing, and it's going to be awesome. I believe we have our San Diego crew next. And I would love to see if Masada is ready to go.
Hi, everybody. I'm really excited to be here tonight. My name is Masada Disenhouse. I'm Executive Director of San Diego 350, and I use she, her pronouns, and I'm calling in from unceded Kumeyaay land. I want to start by describing our utility. Deneen, I'm looking for slides, sorry, but maybe I'll just start talking about it. Our utility is called San Diego Gas and Electric, or SDG&E. It's the only utility in San Diego County. It serves roughly 3.3 million people in 18 cities plus the unincorporated county. So you can see San Diego there in the lower left-hand corner of the map. We're also home to 2 community choice energy programs that have started up in the last few years, San Diego Community Power and the Clean Energy Alliance. Each of them serves several municipalities and is responsible for purchasing the power, while SDG&E continues to be responsible for transmission and billing, as well as purchasing in areas outside the CCAs. Probably the most important thing to know about SDG&E is that it's a wholly owned subsidiary of Sempra. Sempra is a fossil fuel company that distributes and exports methane gas. And SDG&E is basically Sempra's cash cow. Of the $3 billion that Sempra made in profits last year, $1 billion came from SDG&E, and basically from overcharging us, the ratepayers. Sempra uses these profits to build out LNG terminals, pipelines, and other gas infrastructure. Another important thing to know is that SDG&E customers pay the highest rates in the entire country. Occasionally, Hawaii is, I saw Sherry on there earlier, is more expensive than us, but sometimes we're number one. Because of this, more than 1 in 4 families in San Diego can't afford their energy bill. You can see a little clip I took out of the San Diego Union Tribune there. Next, I wanted to talk about what we've been fighting with SDG&E. And for those of you who work on IOUs around the country, I'm sure this is going to sound really familiar to you. First of all, they've tried to kill net metering, which are the incentives that help to make California first in the nation in rooftop solar every single year. Our very first action in January of 2012 was a protest of changes to the net metering system. Last year, the Public Utilities Commission completely failed us and dramatically reduced the benefits of net metering, causing mass layoffs in the solar industry and cutting the number of new installations dramatically. There's a court case pending, so we'll see where that goes. But my big takeaway on that one is to remember to never get too comfortable. Second of all, they're constantly pushing for rate increases as well as changes to the rate structures that maximize their profits. Most of these changes have made it more expensive for the people using the least amount of energy and cheaper for the people using the most energy, essentially removing, any incentive for conservation and efficiency. These rate changes have often used false equity arguments to sway elected officials that have found their mark in the last year or two. And of course, that's not to say that there aren't significant legitimate equity concerns, but that's not what SDG&E is doing. Third, they fight any and all climate policies. As a reminder, their profits are guaranteed by the Public Utilities Commission, so they're not influenced by these things, but their parent is a fossil fuel company. And also the money they make beyond rates is by building things. And so they've fought the California Renewable Portfolio Standard, community choice programs, building electrification. We've fought them on all these things. And finally, they wield tons of local influence. They fund a lot of local organizations and force them to come out and support their bad policy positions. They've been one of the biggest lobbyists in the state legislature, and they have a loyalty clause in their contract with IBW 465, ensuring that labor stays in their corner. So I wanted to touch briefly on a couple of our campaigns. Our kind of ongoing public awareness campaign is called Sempra Fracks Our Future. And we've basically been raising awareness around SDG&E and Sempra's relationship and how terrible SDG&E is. So we've done a number of creative actions, which I have on my next slide. Don't go there yet, though, Denise. Thank you. And that's included direct action, some civil disobedience, countering them at public meetings when they say things that aren't true, and efforts to get media attention, basically. I wanted to talk a little bit about the recent Power San Diego campaign. So we were just part of a city ballot measure effort to fire SDG&E and replace them with public power. Sadly, that just failed in the petitioning phase. This was a campaign that we definitely supported, but did not lead. And just some quick takeaways. We're going to be debriefing this. This literally just happened. So we're going to be debriefing this in the coming weeks. But we do not regret participating in it. It definitely raised awareness, developed a core of volunteers, and put SDG&E on their defense. Some areas that I know we can do better in the future are just having a more robust campaign plan, because we need to get 80,000 signatures in several months, which is a lot. Thinking about how we approach labor and coalition building, just having a more realistic strategy to get the signatures, really. But it's something, so I'm not sure whether this will happen again or not, but either way, we basically know that, SDG&E will not work for us. It doesn't work for us now. It won't work for us, and we'll need to replace them. I'll just go on to the next slide quickly, which is creative tactics. Just want to show you a couple of the pictures and news attention that we've gotten there. And we're basically excited to, work with all of you on nationally coordinated efforts, and we're seeking to be part of broader state coalitions in California. And that wraps it for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Masada. Next up, we have Nikki Darga from 350 Wisconsin.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Nikki. I am the business manager and volunteer coordinator at 350 Wisconsin, calling in from the Madison area on unceded Ho-Chunk land, pronounced she, her. So the utility landscape in Wisconsin, it looks like the Public Service Commission, or the PSC, has jurisdiction over more than 1,100 utilities. And these include for-profit investor-owned, nonprofit rural cooperatives, and 81 municipal utilities as well. So the 5 major investor-owned companies that are pictured here are Xcel Energy, Alliant Energy, the Wisconsin Public Service Corporation, We Energies, and Madison Gas and Electric. And these for-profit utilities, they want to make as much money as possible, regardless of the burden put on the customers. But of course, they're not saying that publicly. So it is critical that we have a strong regulatory environment that prioritizes Wisconsin residents over the utility's bottom line and holds them accountable. And so across the state, low-income households really struggle with energy burden. Their utility bills are taking up a disproportionate amount of their income every month, and many are forced to bear dangerously cold temperatures in the winter and sweltering heat in the summer because it's just too expensive to keep their homes at a comfortable temperature. So unfortunately, the steps for regular people and members of the community to engage with the Public Service Commission is highly complex. And it feels like it was designed specifically to discourage broader community participation. And the way that these dockets were presented to the general public were not equitable or inclusive for anyone who does not have an incredibly deep and detailed knowledge of public policy and energy regulation. And it's often said, kind of in a tongue-in-cheek way, that the PSC is the most influential agency that you have never heard of. So Wisconsin, the makeup of the PSC depends on the governor and the state legislature. So current PSC under the Democratic governor, Tony Evers, is much more favorable towards climate and clean energy than commissioners appointed under our last governor, Scott Walker. So without Governor Evers in office, the successes that we're going to discuss today would have been nearly impossible. So now that we have a state clean energy plan created under Governor Evers, we can now ask the Public Service Commission to support and make decisions consistent with those commitments. So if the governor appoints a commissioner that the legislature doesn't like, they reject or refuse to take action on the governor's appointments. And the legislature also lobbies the PSC for what they want. Now, given that we have been an incredibly gerrymandered state, and that the maps were only very, very recently made more fair this year, the legislature is majority Republican. So recently, after the PSC chair announced her departure, the Wisconsin Senate, just as an example of kind of the internal politics here, fired a commissioner for political reasons, claiming he was a quote unquote activist. So what happens at the PSC is determined by that political landscape. So whenever we have an opportunity to elevate climate and clean energy, we need to jump on that, which is what we did. So where I'm based near Madison, our local utility, MG&E, has a long track record of corporate greenwashing and has been convincing a great deal of our progressive community that they're an eco and justice minded company. However, that is not what they're actually doing. Because later we found out that the 2 utilities, Madison Gas and Electric and Alliant, were proposing rate hikes that would exacerbate inequitable energy burdens, and especially in low income and BIPOC communities. And according to the Citizens Utility Board, MG&E reported in 2022 a profit of $111 million, which is more than double the size of the rate increases being sought. So Alliant reported a massive profit of $350 million in the same year. So they proposed programs that would gut net metering, which allows homeowners in business with solar panels to sell the excess energy back to the grid. And without a statewide policy to protect that net metering, individual utilities seek to undermine it to increase their profits. So we knew that we had to do something we had never done before. We had not been engaged with the PSC prior to this on any sort of large scale level. So we decided to become an intervener and formally intervene with the PSC. So as one of the newest to the PSC of the 17 intervening parties, which are listed here, we had our work cut out for us, right? The interveners included renewable energy advocacy organizations, consumer protection groups, local governments, industry professionals, and more. Solar installers were also engaged in the process. Thankfully, we were in good company with many of the other intervening parties being willing to share their experience and perspective, because these cases are run like lawsuits. So they have extremely tight timelines, and there's information coming in from all sides. And, we're really grateful for the Midwest environmental advocates who agreed to represent us pro bono to help alleviate some of that pressure, because it was a very large learning curve. We also found out that the Wisconsin's PSC allows intervening parties to apply for compensation for intervening. So we applied and we were granted funds for that, which was great. So throughout the proceedings, we worked closely with Blacks for Political and Social Action on energy burden and affordability. We coordinated with a coalition of intervening environmental organizations and local governments to preserve net metering. So our unique interest in both energy affordability and preserving net metering resulted in us being one of only a few of the intervening parties who centered our arguments specifically on environmental justice, particularly the universal right for clean energy. So in addition to providing traditional testimony and brief preparation, we mobilized members of our community and by providing inclusive opportunities to engage. So we presented the issues in language that was clear and accessible, and emphasized how these dockets are relevant to everyone. We provided talking points and sample comment language for everyone to submit comments to the PSC. The PSC actually received far more public comments on these rate cases than is typical for them, which was a clear indicator to the commissioners that they needed to pay attention to what the public wanted. So in collaboration between 350 Wisconsin and Wisconsin Eco-Latinos, using real local data was kind of the building block of what we did. We have reports from 5 different communities in South Central Wisconsin that were submitted as exhibits for the rate cases. The PSC gave them a shout out during one of the hearings, saying they highlighted challenges and opportunities for the utilities to do better, which was great. We also brought our own unique brand of grassroots activism and artivism is what we like to call it. 350 Wisconsin has a reputation in the area for being colorful and having creative dance flash mobs in unexpected places. And we staged a Walking on Sunshine mob featuring solar panels, costumes, choreographed dancers in one of the busiest farmers markets in the country, followed by calls to actions for people walking by. And as a grassroots organization, we were really able to say things that other people, other policy-minded partners couldn't, because we're a bit more scrappy. So we could take an unyielding stance for energy justice there. I'm excited to say that we won both cases. So the rate increases were significantly limited. Net metering would live to see another day, which is great. However, these wins are not a given, right? The conditions were right, and we had to take action to make a difference. So in addition to these wins, we really also ordered energy burden investigations for each utility, and there's more ongoing work in the future. So we're intervening in new cases coming up as well, and there's still more work to do even when we have a success. So we're taking these lessons, we're hoping to carry them forward. We're continuing to push these local utilities. We Energies recently has been proposing building new fossil fuel infrastructure in Wisconsin, and to finance that, they proposed an 18% rate increase for customers over 2 years. So we've been working with Milwaukee area advocates to fight against that, and trying to make the PSC more accessible to Wisconsin residents, because right now it is sort of a black box. It's very hard to understand. So we're working to make that more accessible. And that is all I have for today, but thank you very much. And I will pass it off to our next speaker.
Thank you so much, Nikki. What a great campaign, and always love a good win, but also just the work continues and there's a lot to be doing that we can be doing. And the best part about it is you don't have to do it alone, and also there's creative ways you can be doing the work. So shout out to Wisconsin, and even all of the other groups with their murals and dancing. Totally love to see it. Next up, we have Chantelle from 350 New Hampshire to close us out in our speaker series.
Hello again, everybody. I am Chantelle with 350 New Hampshire. I'm the organizing director, and I am here to talk about our utility success against all odds. 350 New Hampshire has been working to create public pressure around lowering utility bills, capping rate hikes, breaking up our utility companies, Eversource and Liberty Utilities, holding the people in power accountable, and easing access to resources that folks need to help pay their bills. Electricity prices in New Hampshire have fluctuated wildly, yet companies like Liberty Utilities and Eversource, you can go to the next slide, continue to pursue efforts to increase fracked gas imports and raise the rates as high as they'd like, and then also drop them as low as they'd like. They get that opportunity every 6 months uniquely. These companies make record profits at a time when a record number of households need help covering just your basic utility bills. So what started as a call for action around New Hampshire's utility rates has evolved into one of our larger campaigns centering utilities. Since 350 New Hampshire's founding, the organization has taken on many campaigns that intersect in various ways with utility concerns. On the screen, you do see our main two utility providers in New Hampshire. We have Eversource. Eversource is a publicly traded Fortune 500 energy company headquartered in Hartford, Connecticut, and Boston, Massachusetts. They also have several regulated subsidiaries offering retail electricity all over. Primarily, they're serving Connecticut, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire. With Eversource, something that we continue to do is working on holding them accountable, and a big part of that is also monitoring their campaign donations, which we do through our C4 sister organization, 350 New Hampshire Action. Liberty Utilities, on the other hand, also provides electricity, natural gas, and water to more than, it says about 400,000 customers in Georgia, Illinois, Iowa, Massachusetts, Missouri, New Hampshire, New York, and New Brunswick. So let's talk about a monopoly. Liberty Utilities was a driving force behind what was one of our major successes, where they were pushing for a fracked gas pipeline called the Granite Bridge Pipeline. Granite Bridge Pipeline was proposed through the middle of our state in New Hampshire. We ran a fierce grassroots campaign to stop the proposed 27-mile Granite Bridge fracked gas pipeline, and we won. 350 New Hampshire faced this head on and built a strong grassroots campaign by hosting information sessions, training volunteers, going out and canvassing, passing local ordinances, organizing climate strikes, and pressuring elected officials to oppose the pipeline until the project was finally defeated in July of 2020. That was just a huge win. And unfortunately, Both companies will still try to propose new ways of bringing in fracked gas or continuing to use fossil fuels. So that is something that we continue to work on holding them accountable for. All right, and the fight for utility justice continues. It hasn't ended. So what we're doing here in New Hampshire currently is we are advancing community power. Currently, it is town by town. It's a rather nuanced process here, I think, much like everywhere. So we support the New Hampshire Community Power Coalition and their working group in providing folks with a better understanding of how to form the necessary committees and move their town towards a just power grid. With that, this year, there is a county in New Hampshire that is pushing for the first ever county owned utility instead of just by town or having, the whole state. They are pushing for a county wide program. We also have launched our official 350 New Hampshire Utilities campaign this year. And with that, we've launched a local utility justice working group. During that work, we have spent time supporting causes around us. So there was an initiative called Our Power in Maine, and we really saw the potential of what their work could do as far as getting rid of the monopolies and bringing in community-owned power. Although that campaign was not successful, I would say that for the state of Maine, I think they got about 30% of the vote. And I think that's a huge start for it just really coming to light last year. And so, although it did not pass, Our Power laid a humongous foundation down for a utility justice movement and really helped map out what we're currently doing. This is, like I said, all leading up to our utility campaign launch, which focuses on changing the way we think about utilities through education. You find a unified narrative, distributed actions, and pressuring elected officials to condemn Eversource's takeover of our grid and Liberty Utilities. How we're doing that is providing information and messaging around these two major utility providers through canvassing, signal boosting, webinars such as this, training volunteers, and sharing visions of the future with our community.